Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Wherever you are, this is Sally Ember, EDD, and you are watching episode 46 of Changes, Conversations Between Authors, a video cast that is live on October 28th, 2015, with me as the host and my guest, author, teacher, musician, filmmaker, and photographer, Paul Inman. Welcome, Paul.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. I've enjoyed watching the webcast or Google Hangout on air. Sorry, wrong terminology for a while now. Thank you.
Well, you're welcome. And I love having other authors on. That's my whole point of doing this. And I have a particular penchant for having authors that write science fiction, of which you are one. And I know that there's been a whole slew of you that are doing campaigns on Inkshares that all started when I had Brian Guthrie on several months ago. And he just was great at letting everybody know that this was happening. And I think you're my fourth or fifth guest now who's an Inkshares. I don't know if we call you an alum or an ongoing user, or what do you call yourselves?
Well, I'm not really sure what we call ourselves really. But yeah, there's a lot of us. We have like a community that we've built. It's pretty awesome actually. We've been really like helping each other achieve the goals that we want to see happen. So it's been a lot of fun, making a lot of new friends, meeting a lot of new authors. It's very, very cool.
And what can you tell us about Inkshares for people who aren't aware of it, and for anyone who wants to know who isn't watching right now on the Google Plus event page? Please do go to the Google Plus event page, because that has the URLs of your former campaign for your book and your current collaborative campaign for a series of novellas. So tell us more about what all that's about and how people can get on Inkshares.
Okay, well, first of all, inkshares.com is where you would go. Just go to that URL, and it has a beautiful webpage that can, it lays out everything nice and neat for you. But I'm going to try to like condense that. So what it is basically crowd-funded publishing. So something like, if you're familiar with like a Kickstarter, Kickstarter is kind of crowd-funded whatever. Well, these people decided they wanted to take it to the next level, and they wanted to create a publishing house that would work through crowd-funded items. For example, books in this case. So you just go there, you set up your campaign, you try to get people to pre-order your book. And if you hit a certain level, then you are funded, and they put you through the whole publishing process like a normal publishing house. For example, Ageless, which is currently in production through Inkshares, is in the editing stages, I guess you could say. We just finished the first developmental edit, and the next step is copy editing. For those of you that don't know, the developmental edit is the story edit. The copy edit is like, I'm not great with the English language, all the rules and all that stuff. So the copy editor is going to help me clean it up and make it the best it can be. And
so for people who aren't watching on Google Plus, who are too lazy to go look at the event page because they're over on YouTube,
yeah,
I have put up the URLs for your current Inkshare campaign with your collaborator, Patrick Ryerson. And right now we're looking at your Inkshare campaign that you're talking about for your book, Ageless. And so the URL is the https://www.inkshares.com/project/ for you, it's Ageless, AGELESS. But for you and Patrick, it's Motor City Chronicles with hyphens between the words.
That's right? Correct. That's correct.
So to make it easy for people to find things.
Yes, and even if you don't do all that, they have a very intuitive website where if you go to inkshares.com, right at the very top of the page is a search bar. So you can find really quickly just by searching my name, Paul Inman, PAULINMAN. And you can find both of those projects pretty quickly.
So basically it allows self-published or independent authors who don't have an agent and don't have a publication house to acquire the services of a publication house, not an agent, by getting a bunch of people to pre-order your book or your novellas or whatever it is you're trying to publish. Could be a graphic novel, whatever it is. And then if you meet your goal, and do you set the goal or does Inkshares set it?
Inkshare sets the goal. In fact, when I was doing Ageless, I actually entered it into a contest where the top five, excuse me, top five books were going to be published regardless of if they hit their goal or not. So,
and that had to do with the quality of your book, not how many people pre-ordered it.
Well, for the contest, it was actually pre-orders. So,
oh, okay.
But they have recently changed their funding goals. Before it was you had to reach 1,000 pre-orders to be put into production. Now and we're talking like today is Wednesday. We're doing this live. The goals change on Friday. So
yeah, I have that actually on the event page. I copied and pasted that from their website because they put out a whole explanation of what's changing.
Right.
So if anybody is interested, they can go read that on my Google Plus event page for today's episode. But they're saying now that they're giving like a 2-tiered funding possibility with different levels of pre-orders, right?
Well, that's correct. They actually had a 2-tiered level, but they changed what it was. So previously, it was 1,000 for an actual print version of your book and an ebook. Now, and 750 was only the ebook. So now they have changed it to where the print version happens at 750, and they have now made a lower tiered print version, which is more of a print on demand type of tier at 250 pre-orders. So I think it's just it's kind of an experiment, I think, to see if that is a viable option for their future. Because obviously they're still a pretty young company, only being about a year, 2 years old, 2 years old, I think.
And then you and JF, my former guest on episode, I think it was 44 of Changes, Jean-Francois Dubois, are now doing a collaborative podcast / videocast.
Yeah, I think it's actually just going to be a podcast. We didn't have we don't currently have a home, but that will be resolved within the next week. Or that's on the agenda anyway. But so we threw it up onto YouTube to just kind of feel it out and see if people would like it. And we've had some really positive feedback. And the podcast is a lot about, what we did as or what we're doing as crowdfunding publishing is concerned, and as far as writing. And, the ultimate goal here is to just kind of help people in the future when they are trying to decide, do they want to go this route, the same route that we did, or do they not? Because I'm sure that I don't have to tell you, or probably many of your listeners, but getting your book out there is difficult. It's difficult to get it out there.
And did they help you create this cover, which I'm now showing on our video cast so everybody can see it for Ageless? Like, how did you get that cover?
Actually, that's a temporary cover that was made for me by Mr. Paul Robinson, who is an Inkshares author in the funding phases right now for his book called Ghosts of War. What happened is for a while there, I was recording a lot of audio excerpts for different writers on Inkshares to try to help them with their campaign. Because if I find a book that I like, I obviously want to try to help as the best I can. And for me, doing something creative like creating an audio excerpt is exactly like right up my alley. So I read a little bit of his book, recorded like a little mini audio book, I guess, if you would, of like the first of one of the sections he had up on Inkshares. And he in turn created this, as a thank you, created this cover that you're seeing there. In fact, this temporary cover has actually already changed a little bit, kind of changed drastically as we're planning the actual release of the book next spring. So currently, I don't want to reveal exactly what that is, but if you are close to me, you have already seen a lot of maybe like pre-images, like we're still working on, still in the workings phase. So it's being designed currently.
Well, what I think is interesting is that you have a lot of different talents. Obviously, you're a filmmaker. I'm showing some of your cover pieces for your films right now. You're an author. You're a photographer. You are a teacher. You're a musician. So in that way, you're very much involved in a lot of different aspects of the arts. And It sounds like you did kind of a barter with this Paul that's not you.
Yeah. Paul Robinson. Yeah, that's kind of what we did. He was really grateful, and he was like, "Wow, this is great. Thank you for choosing my book." Because, like I said, I just went around and kind of picked and choose what I like. And I liked where his story was going to go. If you don't know anything about it, it's kind of a military science fiction story, and I thought it was really interesting.
Okay.
It caught my attention pretty quickly in his chapter that he had posted on Inkshares. So yeah, I try to stay really busy in the arts, and sometimes my wife, who is very, very supportive, kind of feels like I am pulled in 1,000 directions, and only one of them is toward her. So I love you, honey. I know you're probably watching somewhere, hopefully. So eventually, at least, maybe not live, but.
And you have a daughter who would probably like to see your face occasionally that's not on a video.
Yeah. Yes, that is true. I have a daughter. Her birthday is actually coming up this weekend. So she's turning 13. So
Awesome.
She's great. She asked for I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say she asked for a Lord of the Rings / Hobbit themed birthday party. So that's what we're going to be doing this weekend.
A chip off the old speculative fiction block there. That's great.
Yeah.
Well, the name of your podcast, Videocast with JF, is Right Brain, WRITE Brain as one word. And I did put the URL up for you. Listeners and viewers today or later, it is on the Google Plus event page with all the other URLs for Paul to reach him on Twitter and Facebook and everywhere else that he is, and for me as well. And while we're talking about books and releases, I am also an author, as you know, for science fiction. My Spanner series has 2 volumes already out, but my 3rd volume is about to come out actually for pre-orders this Sunday, November 1st on Amazon and Smashwords. This is my first time using Amazon for pre-orders. Smashwords pioneered this for ebooks, and of course Amazon stole the idea and is now doing it too. So I thought, okay, I'll do it on both. The nice thing about Smashwords is, first of all, they're my home. That's where I first published, and they have every ebook format, not just Kindle. And they also have PDFs and RTFs and anything else you might want to read on any kind of reader. You don't even have to have an e-reader. You can read it on your iPad or computer. And Amazon only has the Kindle format. So just to make that clear to people, if you want to do a pre-order for an ebook, don't do it on Amazon unless you have a Kindle. It's really important. Or the Kindle app on something that you want to read it on. But my new book is This Is Not the Way I Want Things to Change. And it is part of a series. I'm going to write 10. This is my 3rd. I'm also trying to crowdfund putting them into print. I need to buy my ISBNs, which, as you know, are International Standard Book Numbers. And if you get 10 at a time, it is way cheaper, like almost 8 times cheaper than buying 1 at a time. So I'm really hoping to get some help on Patreon, patreon.com/Sally Ember, SALLYEMBER. You can donate as little as $4 and get a free ebook, or donate more and get discounts on my services. I help with proofreading, editing, tutor people in writing, and even help you with marketing if that's what you want. So please go to that. I sing a little song about why I need help because I had a concussion about 1.5 years ago and I'm still recovering. And also just what I would do with enough funding. So please go there and check it out. And please go to Inkshares and check out what you're doing, Paul, and what other people who have been on my show are doing. Kara Weston was on last week. I've had Brian Guthrie, as I said, and JF DeBow. And so I think it's just great that I'm becoming like a little Inkshares supporter, and I'm not even on Inkshares. So there you go.
Well, you should consider perhaps maybe looking into it, which I'm sure you have at this point, me being the 4th or 5th person from Inkshares.
I've only briefly looked at it because, to tell you the truth, I am so busy that I just haven't had a chance to spend a lot of time with it, but I have seen what it is. I haven't really thought about doing it because I'm already publishing. I started my own publishing company. I registered it and everything. It's called Timult Books, TIMULT. I just did that last week, actually, so that I could have that imprint on my covers and on my ebooks, and it's going to be on everything starting in November. And Timult is the word that comes from my series. It has to do with being able to see multiple timelines or perceive aspects of multiple timelines for yourself or other people. That's called timulting. And someone who can timult is someone in my series, the main character, Clara Brannon, can do it. And then it can be something that other people learn to some degree, but you have to have a natural talent for it. It's like singing. You know, like you can be a singer, but nobody can teach you how to hear pitch and how to match pitch. You either can do that or you can't. But if you can do that, then it's like time melting. If you have the capacity, you can be trained to get better at it.
That's a very, very cool description. Can you spell it again for me? Because I was actually trying to write it down because I think it's very cool.
It's TIMULT. It comes from the word simultaneous. My son actually made it up, and it has to do with the idea that all time is simultaneous. And since all time is simultaneous, then everything's always happening. Everything that can happen is happening because of multiple timelines. And so simultaneity is the word my son came up with. And in my books, his counterpart is Zephyr, and I have Zephyr come up with that for Clara. So there are a lot of actual things that happen in my life with the people I know that I put into the books for the characters that are in the book. So there are these blurring lines between fact and fiction. And I wanted to ask you about that in your books, how you deal with that. Like, I know you have some facts in your book because the whole idea of genetic engineering is a fact, but how does agelessness come into your book? How did you do that?
Well, that's a good question. It's also a complicated question, obviously. There's a whole lot of real stuff because it's sort of based in a world that really could exist. A lot of the facts and a lot of the stuff that has happened because Ageless, well, let me back up. Ageless is a non-linear story, okay? So it kind of jumps around in time, and we are seeing historical events that definitely have already happened, and we're seeing a little bit of near future events that, in my mind at least, seem really plausible. So as far as how we deal with the characters, just like you, I kind of build from the world around me. So I look at the people that I know, and I may start a character with that person maybe in mind, but not necessarily trying to emulate who they are, just maybe some of their character traits, I guess, maybe. And then from there, I build around the person, and I create a new person. So that's kind of the idea behind that. And as far as historically, I try to stay really accurate to a lot of the historical things. For example, and this is just a little easy example I always like to use because I think it's fun. There's one point in the 50s where some of the characters are kind of watching TV, and they're watching like an I Love Lucy episode, like one of the very early ones. And I kind of describe that a little bit. And I just think that helps kind of ground this in a more realistic kind of setting. Although realism is not necessarily what I was going for. It just ended up happening that way. So.
And then what has it to do with genetic engineering or with how this person becomes ageless?
Okay, so she, my main character's name is Alessandra, and she actually is born with a genetic defect. And the defect, in reality, it just slows down her aging process. As far as the book is concerned, we don't really know exactly how it works. I don't dive into a lot of heavy sciencey stuff because sometimes that can turn people off. I try to stay away from like the hard science on the science fiction. So I kind of like to describe this book as maybe like sci-fi light, which is something that I shared with Inkshares when I first they first put me into production. I was like, this is kind of like maybe science fiction light because I didn't want to be off-putting by the amount of research that I personally had to do, into the story. That was just kind of background information to help me clarify what I wanted to explain, I guess, without going into tons of detail. So the genetic part of it is touched on here and there, but I don't really dive deep into it. Ultimately, in the story, sometime during World War II, the Germans, in reality, were doing some eugenics experiments. So this person, Alessandra, was one of the people involved in the eugenics experiments, and they try to. Their goal is to try to utilize what they are learning from her, and as well as a few others, into creating like a super kind of soldier. Because obviously, if you had someone who could, well, like in the book, I say Castro, for example, if Castro never grew old, you could see like the negative side to that. So people want to exploit her talents, powers, for lack of a better word. So that's kind of the idea. I don't want to give away too much, but That's kind of what the general idea is, you know.
Well, I think that's great, and it sounds like it is very complicated. Now, does this person who's ageless, when does she find out?
She kind of realizes when she's really young because, again, technically, she's not necessarily ageless. The title is just kind of catchy. But she doesn't really know how it works. I myself obviously know how it works because I created it, but more or less, she ages very, very slowly. So as she's growing up, because we do see her as a child, as she's growing up, she realizes, okay, my body isn't changing like everybody else's, but in her mind, she's progressing normally. So, for example, she could be like, look 9 or 10, but in her mind, she's closer to 20. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, it does. It does. And it's a mental versus physical.
Yes, yes. So ultimately, you know, she's growing as far as her thoughts are concerned. They're more mature as she ages, and physically she's ages a lot slower. So she can get away with appearing the same age in multiple time periods, and that's kind of why I explored the idea of nonlinear from a story perspective, because she can be the same person in the 1970s as she was in the as she is in 2005 or whatever. So
well, and that's the same concept, at least that little part of it, that's in this upcoming movie that you and I were talking about in the green room before we began the broadcast, that features Blake Lively, the actor, it's called The Age of Adeline. Neither of us has seen it, but I've seen the previews.
I have not. I've seen the previews.
And they just are exactly what you just said, that this woman, for whatever reason we don't know, doesn't age past about the age of 30 and continues through many generations and kind of has to hide that. Now, there was also a television show. Did you ever watch it? It was called Forever. It was on for a couple of years, last year, I think, and the year before, of a man who somehow developed disability, but he doesn't know how. And then another man who also did. And they don't age. Everyone around them ages. They don't age. They don't know why. They're also
I did not.
Invulnerable.
What's it called?
Invulnerable. It's called Forever. And
you
could probably get it on Netflix or Hulu or something like that at this point, because it's ended. The series ended. But it was very interesting. That series showed this guy, and we don't know why, who the first time that he's shot doesn't die. He actually ends up in this pool of water, which apparently is something that happens every time he's murdered or dies. His body physically disappears, becomes magically naked, and lands him in the nearby pool of water, whether it's a lake or a river or an ocean. I don't think it matters. And then he has to get out of it and go back and find some clothes and live a life somewhere where everybody who knew him up to that point now thinks he's dead. And for whatever reason, I don't know if he's stupid or just, likes to play with fire, he doesn't change his name all the time. So I don't get that part. But he doesn't age, and he lives through several centuries. And then at one point he adopts a son who, as the TV show begins, is like 30 years older than he is or something now, because his son is a regular guy, right? And he ages. And so they're friends at this point, is what everybody thinks. But really, he raised this boy from a baby, and now this boy's in his 60s. Whereas he stays in his 30s.
That's an interesting concept, actually. How he can die then, apparently, and then he just is reborn, I guess is how it works.
He doesn't totally ever die the way we think of death, but he disappears physically and reappears in the water. So that's kind of a rebirthing, obviously a metaphor, but physically, yeah, he gets reborn, but he's in the same body, and it has no scars.
That's interesting. In fact, Alessandra, the main character from Ageless, she also has invulnerability a little bit. So that's something that most people didn't know. So if you're watching today, you just learned something new.
Well, I have to say something, and I have to apologize to everyone who's trying to watch live. We are having technical problems that I didn't know about till just now. It is not playing on YouTube. It is not playing on the event page, even though it says that it is when I go to YouTube. It says this live event is streaming, but no one can watch it. And this happened to me once before. And what will happen is it will record, and at some point in the next 24 to 48 hours, it will appear on YouTube and back on the event page. But right now, nobody can watch. Nobody can comment unless they go to the event page, but they don't know what we're saying. If they go there, it says this live stream will start soon. It's very frustrating. There's nothing I can do about it. When this happened before, I was just glad that it recorded and that we didn't waste our time. It happened with Robin Andrew, a couple months ago. And I switched how I did everything so that this wouldn't happen again, and now it just happened again anyway. So something's wrong with the Google and YouTube interface, and it's happened to other people in the last week or so, and I was hoping it wouldn't happen to us, but here we are. So we're going to keep going. We're going to record this, but just to let you know, it may not be available right away, and nobody can interact with us while we're live, which really bites something I won't say out loud.
So well, that's okay. We'll just power through. We just power through.
We will. We will. You and I are having a good conversation. We just can't include anyone, unfortunately. So anyway, you just gave away a little spoiler, I guess you would call it, about your book.
Yeah. Yep.
About your main character, Alessandra, that she has a type of invulnerability. So anyone who does watch this later should email you or write to you on our event page and ping you, Paul Inman, and say, I watched, I know about the spoiler. And what are you going to give them for watching? What do they get for their trouble?
They're going to get a hearty thank you from me, and hopefully they're going to get a chance to pre-order the book.
That's right. That's right.
And you know, I was thinking about earlier. I said you can get it from Inkshares. It's also available for pre-order from Amazon and BarnesandNoble.com. So. Oh,
really? So you have already published it then in the pre-order form?
It isn't. In fact, that's something Inkshares did. I didn't know about it until someone told me about it.
So do those pre-orders count toward your total?
Yeah, as far as I know, yes. As far as I know.
Awesome. So people who want to get it from Amazon or Barnes & Noble, which is a Nook reader, they can do that, and it all counts toward your Inkshares total. Awesome. Well, I have Smashwords, which does do Barnes & Noble, iTunes/iBooks, and Kobo, including Smashwords for those pre-orders. So that's what I mean about how they do all formats. And so later then when it's for sale on all those formats through Smashwords as an ebook. And then once I get the print books up, I'm planning to do those through CreateSpace on Amazon. And they'll be print on demand, which means whenever somebody orders one, they get one. And it isn't available then in those other stores as a print book.
I have a question for you. Can you tell me a little bit more about Smashwords? I have heard it, but I have never actually used it. How does it work?
We all have Mark Coker to thank, and he should be given an award from publication, any kind of award-giving organization, because he and his team masterminded independent authors being able to upload their ebooks way before anybody else did, in a way that made it easy and feasible for you to do your own formatting. He made a whole publication guide for the formatting, and he also made a set of videos to show and tell people how to do everything they need to do for getting ready to publish, for doing pre-orders, for formatting. And then he created this company, Smashwords, which you can go and join for free. It's all free. And unless you pay a cover artist, you don't spend a penny. Unless you pay an editor, you don't spend a penny. Many people recommend that you get a professional cover artist, which I did, and that you get professional editing, which I did, but you don't have to. And whatever format you put up, it has to go through their, what they call the meat grinder, which is basically you upload your Microsoft Word or text document, and they check it to make sure that it will format properly into the EPUB, which then formats into the Mobi, which is for Kindle, and formats into the PDFs and all the other formats you need for all the other stores, including iTunes, including Nook, including Kobo. And if it doesn't go through their meat grinder successfully, they'll send you a note and they'll explain as much as they can what your errors are. You go back and fix them. They're not so great about telling you about the errors, but there are all these forums that will help you. So they'll give you like a code or an explanation that's good enough, and then you can go. Like the first time mine went through, it didn't go through perfectly because you can't use numbered lists and make it through the meat grinder. Somehow it just makes it go, Mwah! So you can use bullet points, you can use symbols for your bullets, but you can't use numbers. You can use them on your chapter headings, but you can't use them in the text because it screws up whatever they're doing. So once I understood that, which I learned from the forums, I went back and just took out the numbers and put in bullets, and then it was all fine. So I went through my second try. Some people try 4, 5, or 6 times because they didn't read the formatting manual, so they're dopes. If you read the manual and you do it correctly the first time, you don't have any problem. Now, what some people experience is they've already written their book and they didn't format it correctly. And then, unfortunately, they can't really fix it because there's a lot of hidden text, hidden formatting marks that people don't really understand that screw it up. So they tell you that you have to do something called the nuclear option, which is horrible. You have to take out all the formatting and start with like nothing and then build it up from scratch and do it correctly. So my advice to everyone who's never formatted an ebook, start by reading the Smashwords guidelines because they work for Amazon. They work for everything. Read those guidelines, watch those videos, then format your ebook properly the first time. If you do that, then you can do a save as for every ebook after that and just change the text and you'll be fine.
That's actually pretty cool that you can save it. You know, Ageless would have got destroyed in the meat grinder. I have one section of numbered lists in the book, and that would have just shut me down, just like it did with you.
It would have, but you can go change it. You can just put in bullets and it would be fine. It's not that you can't have lists, it's that they can't be numbered. I don't know why. It isn't good though. Smashwords is not good for heavily illustrated books, for books with lots of lists that need to be numbered, for a few other kinds of nonfiction. It isn't the best thing. And I can't really tell you what is. But if you're a fiction writer, it is great. And I am so grateful to all those people there. And they're really customer service friendly. They answer you right away if you send them an email. They help you figure stuff out. And like I said, they have a forum that's really great. And so I recommend it highly. And then I went from there. Once I had my EPUB and my .mobi, I could go from there. The .mobi is the Kindle. I could just upload that directly to Amazon, or I could use my Word document, whichever one I wanted. The only thing you have to change when you do that is it can't say Smashwords Edition on it. You know, like the one for Smashwords says Smashwords Edition, and the one for Amazon can't say that on the first page, but otherwise it's all good.
Well, I get that makes sense. That makes sense.
Yeah, so that's what I've been doing now. I'm on my third one.
Yes, and I did see your covers for the first two. They're cool. I like them a lot.
Thank you. Nice. That's Idonna Willow-Raven, W-I-L-L-O-W, capital R-A-V-E-N. She's an awesome artist with a lot of different kinds of covers. You should go to her webpage. She does fantasy. She does regular fiction and romance. She does science fiction. She does all different kinds of covers. She has many different styles, and she's very good to work with in terms of, I told her what I wanted, and she told me what was possible because I'm not an artist, and then we sort of found the place that it worked on a cover and worked for what I wanted and what she could do that would look good. And she helped me pick my font and design the way the cover would look with the words and everything. So she's very, very good that way. And I really appreciate her because she's not ridiculously expensive and she's a complete professional. And she gives a series discount.
I am totally with you. I love doing all kinds of artistic, creative things, but I am totally not an artist. I try to draw something and it always looks terrible. So I love it when you can find someone who's just like gets your ideas really quickly and they totally understand what you want, and they are very helpful just like that, you know. And I have had a couple people who have done that with me. Melissa Berg, for example, she's a fantastic artist, and she helped with some graphics that are going to be going into Ageless, as well as when you had Kara Weston on, you guys talked about the coloring book that she helped put together, and she helped with illustrations for that, for the coloring book from the Motor City Chronicles that Patrick Ryerson and I are currently funding on Inkshares. So she was very helpful, and she was very amazing. She got exactly what I wanted, and she was like, "Yep, I can do this, no problem." And she just made it happen. It was great.
Well, one thing that I think is important is that when you work with cover artists, now was that Berg, B-E-R-G?
Yes, Melissa Berg, B-E-R-G.
Okay. Melissa Berg. They also just know a lot more about art. Like, I don't know anything about art. I really don't. And so she knows like what works proportionally and what works in terms of the foreground and background and what's going to look good on a thumbnail versus a really big cover. And she also knows about, like, you know, what looks too busy and proportional coloring and just all these things that I could tell her what I wanted, but I couldn't tell her if it was a good plan. She could tell me, oh, that'll work or that won't work.
Well, yeah, and that's kind of what Melissa did. She just said, "Give me your thoughts and ideas, and I'll figure something out that I think could look good." So, in all honesty, like I really sketched out a couple of things that were terrible. They were definitely stick figures and weird looking trees and bushes, and I had to draw a car, and that was just horrible. It just looked like a bunch of bob of each other. So she really took that and she kind of made it something that looked good instead of just terrible. So it was great, actually. She's a really good person, and I enjoy working with her, and I really hope to work with her again in the future.
Well, I think that's awesome, and I think that your community that you talk about creating through Inkshares and building through Inkshares, that is an amazing opportunity that Inkshares created for a lot of authors and illustrators and other kinds of artists and creative people to collaborate. And so that's wonderful that that's happening. I think it's one of those things that should happen more often. And Wattpad doesn't really do that. Wattpad is something I use just to put up some excerpts. And a lot of people have some other places like Juke Pop Serial, and there's some other ones that are just for youth where you can put up chapters or even your whole book if you want and get feedback. And those don't really engender collaboration. They engender the kinds of feedback, sharing, and critiquing that you might call collaborative, that people really appreciate. But that's not what you're talking about.
No, actually, some of the Inkshares authors have actually gone over to Wattpad and signed up recently. And the only reason I know that is because of our community. We have forums on Goodreads. In fact, I think the forum is called Inkshares Writers Forum. And so in the forum on Goodreads, there are, a couple of hundred people over there now, and we're just communicating daily about many different aspects of writing. And, we put up threads that are like, hey, I need somebody to maybe read through this to make sure it makes sense. I need somebody to help me with illustrations. And that's just where it's kind of grown from like nothing in the past, I don't know, month and a half. But it's really, really a collaborative thing. In fact, there's one man, John Robin, that's John Robin, Robin. He is funding a book called Blood Dawn on Inkshares. And he is just amazing. He just like helps everyone out. He is really kind and he's very helpful. And he is constantly providing feedback for people and coming up with new ideas in our forums. And he just helps run the show, as well as some other high profile members of the community as well. And it's just really great to be part of that. It feels so supportive. Like I can say in the sword and laser contest that I was part of back in the spring, where Ageless actually got funded, we felt kind of isolated and alone because at that point we didn't really know each other, and the competition felt like it was really cutthroat, and it was really like very, very difficult. And it actually made a lot of us pretty upset about that because, as far as getting stuff out there, that a reader is not just going to read one book, but in order to do something like crowd-funded publishing, you have to get these people to be on your team. They have to want to support your dream. And it turned into more like really competitive sport or something. I mean, I don't know what to compare it to, but it was very
Maybe
difficult.
It was more like one of those prom popularity contests for who's going to be the king and queen.
That is totally a better description. That's what it did feel like. And, after that was over, some of us got together and we're like, listen, we don't want to ever do that again. Like it kind of turns us off to this idea of crowdfunded publishing, but we actually turned that around and made it something that's really a lot of fun and very supportive. It's just really a great thing. Really.
Well, and I feel really happy because I got this feeling when Brian came on the show that this was a burgeoning thing that I hadn't heard of till he came on, and he was about 2 months ago, I think, and he had won that contest too. And I think his novels are called Rise, or his series is called Rise.
Rise.
And I think that a lot of people are now giving each other shout outs and helping each other and really collaborating in an informal way as well as formally. And my show has somehow become a little bit of a part of that by having 4 of you on it, and then you all mention each other and mention other InkShares people, and I think that's wonderful. I'm happy to be part of that, even though my books aren't on there, because then maybe other people will hear about this, and both your books and our books and everybody's books, you know, they say a rising tide floats all the boats. So
Right,
let's try to float all the boats with our rising tide, right?
Exactly, and that's what we're hoping to achieve with the community that we're building. And like we're all together. Like Melissa helped with the illustrations for some of the graphic illustrations for Ageless, but she does have her own book as well. It's called the let me see. It's called The Prophecy of the Stars. Let me make sure that's right. The Prophecy of Stars. Yes, but she's has been funding as well, and with this new pre-order goal, she may be able to this new tier. I mean, she may be able to get something going for herself. And we're just really supportive of each other. And that's why I said that maybe you should consider looking into it, or at least maybe joining our group over at the Goodreads forums. So.
Yeah, I feel like I could be kind of the grandma, because so far everybody I've been talking to is about the same age as my son. So, not the grandma maybe, but you know what I mean? Like, I'm not more advanced as a writer, but I'm definitely in a different generation as a person,
Right. Well, I think that I don't know John Robin personally, but I've never asked him his age, but I get the feeling that he's kind of the grandfathery person over all of us. So I'm sure we would love you to come in and do the same thing, but from a grandmotherly perspective, if that's something you're interested in.
Well, I'll have to see if I have time. I really one of the things I'm doing now, unfortunately or fortunately, depending on your point of view, is to take a hiatus. I'm not sure I put the and in there, but we'll see. From Changes for the next 2 months with the holidays and some traveling I'm doing to be with my son, and a lot of other things with my own books, publications of the print versions, and transferring ebook to print, by the way, is no small thing. It is a huge formatting nightmare that I am conquering, but it is very time consuming to transfer everything from ebook to print. Is a chapter by chapter, line by line, paragraph by paragraph formatting endeavor. You don't just copy and paste, cut, copy and paste. It is not like that. So that's what I've been doing. And I finished volume 1. I finished volume 2. Volume 3 has just been completed in its editing format and ready to be up for pre-orders as an ebook. So now I'm about to start that whole converting it to print for the formatting on volume 3. So hopefully that's all going to happen, but I need time to do that. So I'm not going to have any more Changes episodes till January 16th. So anybody who wants to be on the show, I would welcome your contact. And I put everything you need to know about Changes on my website, SallyEmber.com, SallyEmber.com. And there's a Changes page, and please read the instructions. It tells you everything. Please follow them. And then you can write to me when you're ready and tell me when you want to be on the show. All the dates are listed, and you can pick 2 and send them to me. So maybe I'll get more InkShares people, or maybe I'll just get some other kinds of writers. I invite every kind of writer, from young adult, actual young adults. I've had one teenager on my show already, and I would love to have more. And any age, any type of writing, blogging included, books, films, screenplays, poems, nonfiction, and fiction.
Yeah, definitely. I'll be definitely spreading the word for anyone who is interested for you, because this is a lot of fun. I'm really enjoying it so far.
Thank you. Well, I want to ask you, because we're now unbelievably already at almost quarter of the hour. And so I'm going to ask you my major question that I ask everybody that comes on my show, because our theme, as you know, is changes. And I want to ask for you to speak to the part of this question that really inspires you. And the question is, given all the local, personal, regional, statewide or provincial, national, global, scientific or technical, artistic or musical, climatic or environmental, spiritual or religious, or any other kinds of changes you're aware of, which ones arouse hope? Which ones evoke fear? What are the changes you'd like to talk about? Take it away, Paul Inman.
Okay, well, I'll maybe start with the personal, because obviously that's going to be the easiest. Personally, for me, I'm having lots of changes in my life right now with publishing Ageless. This is something that I have never attempted to do before, and it's something that I didn't know that if I could do or not. So I really wanted to, a few years ago when I started doing this, in fact, I have a book over here. My friend wrote a book. This is it right here. Her name is Kira Cass. She wrote this particular book and she self-published it. It's called The Siren, by the way. She self-published it, and I sat back and I said, I could do that. I'm sure I could do that. So, then I sat down and actually started writing, and I got a paragraph in, and I was like, I cannot do this. So I kind of put the idea like on the shelf in the back of my mind, and I just let it kind of percolate a little bit for a while. Then I was like, you know what, I'm really going to try this again, because I'm sure if my friend Kira can do it, I can do it. I can do anything I want. That's what the mindset was. So I was like, all right, let's start over and try again. So I refined my idea a little bit, and I sat down and I started writing, and I got, a couple of pages in, and I was like, yeah, this is pretty fun. This is pretty interesting. So I sat down again.
Wait, I just have to interrupt. So you're not an outliner. You're what we call a seat of the pants writer.
No, not necessarily. In the beginning, yes, because I didn't know what I was doing. But after I got a chapter or two in, I was like, okay, I've got to have an idea of what's going to happen. And I did have an idea in my brain, but I didn't have it written down anywhere. Now, what I did is after a couple of chapters, I started making these large bullet points about this has to happen, this has to happen, this has to happen. Then I started for each chapter breaking it down and making bullet points as I went. But here's the thing, though. Instead of like printing that off and checking things off, I just erased them because it was in the same document. So I don't have any of my outline stuff. I should have kept all that, but I don't have any of it. So, but then again, I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know what I was doing. So, I sat down and I really just tried to like make this happen. And then 3 years, it took 3 whole years between being a teacher, which, takes up all of your time when it's during the school year. So I didn't have a whole lot of time to dedicate to actually writing. But about 3 years later, I had a finished product, and I was like, yeah, I'm pretty proud of this. And I like to tell the story to people who ask about, I got to page 26. And then I finished 26 and went on to 27, and I stopped writing, and I looked at my wife and I said, Kim, her name is Kim. Kim, I have officially written more than I have ever written on anything in my life. And I was like, so even if I stop right here, I feel like I've had a major goal, I met a major goal. So, but yeah, it's really, personally, for me, this change is difficult because, again, as a teacher, our time is just non-existent during the school year. And right now is obviously the school year. And so I go to school every day and work all day, and then sometimes into the evening with school. And then I come home and I work on the book. And I kind of feel like, especially during the last round of edits, I feel like every single second of my life is consumed. And, that's really great when you're a creative person, but after 2 or 3 straight weeks, you kind of feel like, okay, I need a little bit of a break somewhere,
and your family might want to see you,
And that's exactly the thing. In fact, the day that I turned in my edits, I was like, we're going to go do something together. We're going to hang out and spend some time together, because I feel like I've been, neglecting my duties as a father and a husband a little bit. But they're really supportive. They're like, yes, this is your dream. We want you to do this. But, that quality time of life is very, very important, because especially when you have a young child, because that time just completely rolls by and it never stops.
Yeah.
And that's kind of a theme that I explore in Ageless. I mean, as you can imagine, time is a theme in the book Ageless. So, I mean, that makes a lot of sense. But, I kind of am like, as a person personally, I'm kind of like, I don't want to lose this time, but then again, I don't want to lose this chance either. I want to do both. I want to have everything. You know how it is. You want to have everything. So that's something that I'm a little bit afraid of. And I'm also afraid that, again, this is something I've never even attempted. I'm afraid of am I doing things right, or is this wrong? In writing, no one can really tell you this is completely wrong, because
I could tell you.
Well, no. It's sort of subjective is what I mean.
A lot of it is. You're absolutely right.
So it's hard to really know. I mean, you can get advice and you can get this isn't traditional, but you never know what's going to happen.
Well, that's why you need a critique group, because what you really want to know is, does this work? Does this convey the tone, the meaning, the kind of story I want to convey in the way I most want to convey it? Do you get what I'm trying to give you?
That's right.
The only question that matters.
And that's right. And that's hard sometimes because as a writer, you feel like this exactly says what I needed to say. And then you go back and you read it and you're like, this does not say anything. When you're writing it, you're writing it and you're like, this is perfect. I love this. This is the best thing ever. You sleep on it and you read it again. You're like, this is terrible. This is going, I'm deleting this. This is going away. And then
I just had to delete a whole section of my book that I was very attached to, but my editor said, no, this is just convoluted and esoteric and it's boring and nobody but you cares about it. Get rid of it. And I sat back and I really paid attention to what she said, and I thought, she's right. But it was painful to just delete, because I had poured some thought and effort into it, but she was correct. I'm the only one who would care.
Exactly. And I'm in the same boat. I just deleted probably 6,000 words from the manuscript that for Ageless. Yeah, which ends up, well, depending on your formatting, ends up being somewhere between 20 and 30 pages. So that's a lot, I'm like, man.
Don't even talk to me. First of all, each of my books in ebook form is over 300 pages. And each of my books in print form, I just found out 2 weeks ago, is over 500 pages.
Wow, those are huge books. That's great.
Science
Congratulations.
fiction can be big books, but I didn't realize they were that big. I knew I'd written a lot, but I didn't know pagination because I had ebooks. So now that I've seen them in their formatted print form, I'm just kind of blown away by how much I've created. And basically, I've written over 1,500 pages for the first 3 books.
That's amazing. That is a great accomplishment.
And then it makes me mad. I have to give a pet peeve, a little rant here during your time. I'm very sorry, but I have to give a little rant.
Go for it.
One of the changes of indie publishing that I think is awful is that people can put up a short story or a novella or something really puny, and they can charge the same thing I do. And they can get the same competition in the same genre that I'm in, and that's completely unfair. Because look at the difference between 100 pages and 500 pages, not just in terms of quantity, but time and effort and creativity and thought and all those things. I just want there to be a different category for brief. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I totally know what you mean. And, that's the hard thing about cutting those 5,000 to 6,000 words is the time and the creativity and the thought process, because that's really what it comes down to. Like, how much effort did I put into it to just highlight and delete,
Well, wait a minute. I hope you did save as and keep it somewhere.
I still have it, yeah. In
fact,
I
have drafts. Okay, good. Don't get rid of anything, because what I found out, which is interesting, because I'm writing a series, I have found out that I can put some things that don't belong in one of the first few books in a later volume, or I can write a short story, or I can do a blog post, or there's just a lot of things I can do with stuff that I've created. So I am not in the habit of getting rid of anything. I'm just trying to put it in the right place.
Right. And maybe that's a better way to put it. But I was just trying to make it something that someone who's not a writer could understand. It's hard to just take it out of the story that you've created.
Right.
And again, like, I didn't delete it. I have earlier drafts, and I took that section and I saved it on its own, because you're right. I'm really toying with the idea of making that particular section a short story and maybe putting it out on my website for people to read, eventually when the book comes out, and say, here's what didn't make the cut, or here's a little added bonus. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's like on a DVD, they put outtakes.
Yes, it's exactly what it's like. I'm afraid of when it does come out. I mean, I think it's natural to have a little bit of anxiety. Like, are people going to enjoy it? Like, I've spent a big chunk of my life, coming up with this idea, thinking things through. And, it's going to be difficult getting those first couple of reviews, which I know you're not supposed to read the reviews, but let's be honest,
yes,
we all probably do, right?
Oh, I don't believe that you aren't supposed to read reviews. I believe you aren't supposed to take them personally. But you can learn a lot from reviews, even the ones that are crappy, even the ones that just have one line that say, I hated this book, go die. I mean, you don't learn a lot from that, but it can make you laugh, you know?
Yeah.
And,
Oh yeah.
and the people who actually take the time to read your book and write actual insightful responses to it are hugely helpful and can help you in the future, can help you if you ever revise this book, but help you write future things better. And I love my reviewers. I thank every single one. I put a link to every review except for the ones, I didn't read this, I hated it, go die. That's not really a review. But if anybody really writes a review, I link to it on my website and I thank them. I'll print the bulk of it in a blog post and then link to it. I appreciate every review. Please write reviews for my books. Anyone who reads them, please, please, please.
And I'm not gonna not like the reviews. I obviously want reviews too, but I just think that it's going to be tough seeing that first negative one. Even if they back it up, it's still something that you've created, and that's always hard for someone who's creative because everyone has different opinions about everything. So that's something that I'm actually kind of afraid of personally.
But if they take the time to read it and they give you their considered, honest opinion, that is better than gold. Even if you don't like what they wrote, you learn something about what that particular reader really believes and feels after they've read your book. And then you can think about it and think, that's okay with me. I don't mind if they feel that way. Or, wow, I really didn't intend for that. How did that happen? And then you can think about it and go fix it in the future or fix it in your next revision because you are now learning something that you didn't know about how somebody that isn't you and someone who didn't love it reacts, and it's hugely valuable.
Well, you're right. You're right. And as a creative person, I already go through this process a lot. And every time you create something, if I'm writing music or if I'm doing a concert at school and people critique it, like with the kids, the concert with the kids at school, we, as a creative person, we understand how to take that and how to use it, but it still stings. It still stings.
It can. And what really stings, Paul, is that we only have 4 minutes left.
Oh no, already?
I know, it's ridiculous, but it's true. And so I want to make sure you get to say any shout outs and announcements and thank yous and everything you haven't said yet. Give you a minute or two to do that right now.
Okay, I got a little list here, if you don't mind me reading it. First off, I'd like to thank you for having me. I appreciate the opportunity, and it's been a lot of fun. And, if you are someone who's listening to this in the future, try to contact Sally and, come on and voice your opinion, share your writings. It's a lot of fun. So just do it.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Obviously, I want to thank Inkshares for giving me the opportunity to have a book in production, and Girl Friday Productions, who they work with to design the book and do all the legwork, maybe I'll say. I also want to thank my wife, because first and foremost, Kim is her name, and she supports me no matter what I do, no matter how silly it is, no matter how much time it takes. And my daughter Parker too. They both just support me, and they love to see me happy, which is how this stuff makes me feel. So I want to thank my friend Pete Fry. He turned me on to Inkshares back when there was the contest. So that's how I got involved in all this. I would like to thank Melissa Berg for the graphic stuff that's going to be in Ageless, and the graphic stuff for Motor City Chronicles Book 1 Transgressions. Kara Weston for helping organize the coloring book to help get the word out for lots of authors, not just herself. JF Dubois for, being a friend and working the podcast with me, Right Brain, and just being supportive whenever I've got a question. He's a little bit further in the process than I am, so he's done the things that I'm doing. So, and check out his book, The Life Engineered, and maybe support his new book that is funding called A God in the Shed. My friend Patrick Ryerson, who I'm working with on the Motor City Chronicles, and my other friend Kira Cass, who inspired me to try to write something to see if it worked, and Paul Robinson for helping out with the current temporary cover for Ageless that is out there now. Everybody can see. And if I forgot you, I'm so sorry. I did try to write some stuff down to read, so I apologize.
I love that you did that. It's kind of like an Academy Award speech. So thank you for doing that. And
Yeah, I was
think it's
waiting on the
important.
music to start playing, you know.
I think it's important for us to thank our collaborators, our helpers, our mentors, our inspirations, our colleagues, all those people. And I want to thank all of you. I have beta readers, especially Devora Fox and Ellen Fleischman, whom I want to thank for helping me so much with my books. And Idonna Willaraven, as I said, my cover and logo artist. And then really excited to announce that my next project is to be almost finished with volume 4. And so for me, Changes in Attitude, Changes in Latitude is probably coming out in the late winter of 2016. I am more than
Fantastic.
3/4 of the way through it. Yeah. So that's exciting. And I want to thank everybody who follows my blog, sallyember.com. Please continue to comment and visit and find out more about changes and come on in January. And that is it for today's episode. I just want to say thanks to everyone who's watching in the future, since you couldn't watch live. And I hope YouTube gets its act together and Google Plus Hangouts on Air start playing nicely better with YouTube, because this is really frustrating. So thank you, Paul, for coming on. And
thank you
everybody
again.
else. All right. And I'm going to say what I always say at the end to everybody. Bye, and go well with your changes.